Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 331 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on Introduction to the Forensic Psychology of Deception. And it is Friday the 20th of June 2025 as I record this. So today's podcast episode is a lot of fun and it's absolutely brilliant because the forensic psychology of lie detection is a brilliant brand new book that I've produced and I've written, and now it's available. It actually came out today, and this book I've been wanting to write and research for so long because why do criminals lie? Why do we actually want to get involved in deception? Most importantly, why is it of interest to psychologists? Not only because is lying a human behaviour, so of course psychologists are interested in it, but how can we apply psychological theory, and also why should we bother, applied as forensic setting, just so we can understand why do criminals lie, and most importantly, how can we better detect these lies? And then we also deal with some critical thinking topics too, though. That's all covered in the book, and some of it's covered in today's podcast episode. So it's a lot of fun, so you've got that to look forward to in the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one is, sticky thinking hampers decisions in depression. Though a low mood is the best known symptom of depression, indecisiveness and biased thinking are also common. These decision-related problems, which can lead to delays in making important choices and being more likely to make poor ones, receive less attention, write Hung Yang and Mary Van Hong at the University of Greenwich in their recent paper in Emotion. Many other theories that are being put forward to explain difficulties in decision making are based on work suggesting that depressed people are not as responsive to rewards or punishments as healthy people, the authors note. However, there is some evidence that rumination could also disrupt decision making by making it harder to navigate between and weighing up options. Okay, so that's a quite good and some good food for thought, because I remember back in my sixth form options, which is the education system here in the UK between 16 and 18 years old, one of the first bits about depression I ever learned about, and then I explored this more in my undergrad and my master's, was the negative attention bias. So the oppressed people tend to focus more on the most negative outcome and the most negative stimuli. And once they've seen this negative option, they find it very hard to move towards a neutral stimuli or a more positive stimuli. So that definitely plays a part in it. And I've always found that quite interesting. Plus, I also remember Abrahamson and all 19 something, I do not know. I'm going to say it's either 1993 or 1997. And it's the research study on cognitive styles. So if you've got a negative thinking processes, then you're more likely to develop depression. But if you've got a more positive outlook, and if you've got a more positive cognitive style, then you're less likely to develop depression. But going back to what the actual article is saying, before I go off on like random tangents. So when we consider the a negative attention bias that depressed people have, decision making by making it harder to navigate between and weighing up options. So I don't think that this is a part of it, because when you've got biased cognitive processes, and then if there's an option which is that can be worst of a few, then you might focus on it, and that's actually going to go in to make you struggle to weigh up the different options, much less focus on them, especially if you're quite prone to catastrophizing, because you're going to be focusing on this more negative option, or even it doesn't have to be the most negative option, it just has to be slightly worse for you. Then you're going to be ruminating and catastrophizing about it. So lots of interesting food for thought, and I hope in a future years that the decision making aspects are focused more on, because there's a major area of depression and mental health that impacts people's lives. So the second one is, unpopular policies get an easier ride once passed. From restricting car use in cities to implementing outdoor smoking bans, policy efforts to change people's daily routines are not always well received by the public. In fact, sometimes they're even met with clear resistance. What happens after such policies actually comes into practice, though, can be a different matter entirely. Writing in PNAS, Amir Gonu and their colleagues find that public resistance drops significantly post-implementation of new policies, suggesting that even unpopular policies might have an easier time sticking around once passed. Obviously, as I always say, this is not a political show, but there are two things I want to say about this one. So, first of all, I think that this really does depend on the policy itself. And of course, because of your own a situation, because of your own political beliefs, your own personality traits, etc., you will have different ideas to me, to your friends, to your family, about what is a good policy and what is a bad policy. I say in air quotes. Air quotes. So I'm not going to go into politics here, but I think that this can be a good thing and a bad thing, because let's look at something that is very not controversial whatsoever. Let's look at seatbelts. So when the driving test came in, and when a seatbelt, the two of them are not actually linked. I don't know why I'm talking about them as if they are. But when seatbelts were first introduced and when the driving test was the first introduced, they were very unpopular, and I can understand why, because people had been driving freely round, and now all of a sudden they couldn't drive unless they took this test, which costs some money. But now, if we fast forward to now, no one cares about doing the driving test. We just accept that it's something that we have to do in the name of our public safety, and we just got to do it, which I suppose is annoying. As someone who flat out hated driving and almost gave up quite a few times, but now I actually quite like it to some extent. It's just something that we've just got to do. So in some respects, that's really good, because we need people to be able to take their driving test just so we know that they're safer drivers, because that saves lives. But equally, if we look at Thursday's podcast episode that came out last week, book bans and other anti-LGBT plus bills, if public resistance drops after these bills have come into force, this is not good at all. Because these harm people's mental health, it increases suicide rates, and everything else that I've already spoken about on the podcast tons of the times before. So I do see that this is a good thing and a bad thing, but I do just think that this shows the importance of engaging in politics, fighting and campaigning a form of what you believe in. So just some food for thought. So the final one is negotiating many identities as a school-based researcher. Open quote. When I began a research project investigating the relationship between mindfulness and pro-social behaviour in junior schools, I anticipated methodological challenges, ethical considerations, and recruitment hurdles. What I hadn't fully anticipated was how challenging it would be to slip between different roles: teacher, researcher, facilitator, practitioner, all within the same working day. As a psychologist, conducting research in schools didn't just mean managing logistics, it meant navigating who I was and how I presented myself to others in each moment. Close quote. Take a peek behind the curtain of conducting psychological research this week with this piece by Dr. Kate Crumpton, a research fellow at the University of Warwick. So I won't peek behind the curtain, so to say, but what I will say is this is very relatable. So I'm going to focus on what I have to say based on my experience, then I'll make some more broader ones. Because even though this isn't directly the same, but as a lot of you know, if you've been following the podcast for quite a while, well, I'm a student ambassador through my university. So I work with disadvantaged children who come from the private areas with a below the national average number of children who will go on to university. So what we do lots of fun activities just to help inspire them and show them that regardless of their background and the barriers that face them, university is possible if they want to go. And as part of that, sometimes I'm a supporting ambassador, I'm a lead ambassador, I'm an outreach tutor. So sometimes I'm tutoring and I'm presenting content and presentations, but other times I'm doing the logistics, I'm collecting students. And it's that lead ambassador bit with the reading support I want to focus on here, because during that I was a boss, I say in air quotes, to the other ambassadors, but equally I was the contact between the librarian and the school. I was the person who the teachers interacted with when I went to go and pick up the young people. But I was also a friendly face, and to be honest, sometimes a confidant to some of the children. So I understand what it means about juggling so many different roles, and I completely agree. Sometimes it is quite challenging to juggle all of that, and sometimes you just want to go, wow, I just want to be one person for a little bit though. And this is something that I get with my own research, which is what I'm doing a lot more at the moment, because I'm going back to my dissertation. Yeah, you've got to be a friend to the clinical population that you're researching. You've got to be understanding. You've also got to be a researcher, practitioner, facilitator, psychology student, a supervisee. I have no idea if that's a real word, but I'm going with it. So what my point is, in our clinical psychology careers, or whatever area of psychology you want to go into, chances are you will have to be a lot of different things, and that's okay. That's part of the fun. Just be aware of it, try and make a space for all of these different roles, and most importantly, just have fun and look after yourself. Practice self-care and self-compassion. So, I hope you enjoy the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. So this week has been so much fun. It's been a little more chaotic than I would have thought that it was going to be, but it's been so much fun. Not only because at my university it's part of the summer call season, so I've had my first week of constant outreach work, which, as I explained in the psychology news section, those been working with like lots of students, young people, and in aspiring them, and doing lots of fun activities. And for 3 of those days, I was taking part in Constellation Week here at the university. And now that was a lot of fun because I was outreach tutor for the ecosystems. So it was very last minute, to be honest, but it was so much fun because last year the food chain and the food web activity just didn't work, and that was fine. It was a pilot, and this is what I like about ambassador work though and outreach, because we learn, we adapt, we crack on, and we develop something new. So what we actually did, like at this time, was the bit that I led was the woodland walk, and I learned so much about the southern wood ant, and because I had to show students on this little bit of like nature walk, the like ant nests, the fox poo. Also, we were trying to like get them to create their own food web. So we've got the like producers, the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, and the apex predators. So I got to talking to them about ants, birds, foxes, mice, and lots of different other woodland creatures. And it was a lot of fun. Like, I enjoyed it. Like, I learned a lot. Some of the kids were really engaged, and this was the really surprising thing though. And something that I learned quite a bit from was even the students who looked really bored and disengaged in their little classroom bit introducing the session, which I didn't lead. Once I got them outside, and once we were doing the woodland walk, they were so engaged. They were asking me so many questions. Like, the amount of students who asked me, "Can I jump in the ant's nest?" was surprising. It was quite funny, to be honest, but I had to manage that quite carefully. And I was like, "No, like, you really shouldn't." And then the other main thing this week was that I've been working quite a lot on my dissertation, because I got it back from my supervisor. And as she said, there was a lot of feedback. There were a lot of comments on it. That's just because she wanted it to be perfect. And I've got lots of good points there. Like, I have got a really good bones and ways to like structure it. So I'm chipping away at it. There was a lot more statistics than I thought, and this I found quite funny. So I don't know if all of you know statistics to quite an advanced level. Basically, I had to learn it from like scratch again. But in my study, I used the mental health inventory version 5 as one of my mental health skills. And I kept running the internal reliability coefficient. I would say what it is, but I don't know how to pronounce it. It's the alpha one, Crowback alpha coefficient, and I kept getting 0.076 as the internal consistency. And I was like, this is not right, because according to this internal reliability measure, this scale does not measure the same thing whatsoever. And I rerun it a few times. I could not get my head around it. And then earlier, I was like, oh wow, are any of the items reverse coded? And then it turns out 3 of the 5 items were reverse coded. So I unreverse coded them, ran my internal reliability measure again, and it was really good. I think it was close to 0.8, which for this particular test is brilliant. Like, that's actually the figure that you will want. So I was really impressed, and it was just like, oh yeah, note to self, always unreverse code your items. So I've definitely learned a lot about statistics this week. And then next week I should also be quite fun because I'll be continuing with the dissertation, which isn't fun, but it's just something that you chip away at. And I'm learning a lot at the moment, which just like goes to show that you learn more from your mistakes and stuff that you've not done well compared to your successes. Then I'll also be continuing some more outreach work, like I've got assembly talks, I've got some more outreach tutoring, and a whole bunch of other really fun things, which I'm looking forward to. And then finally, I'm also dying from the heat at the moment, because tomorrow it's going to be 31 degrees. Now, I know for a lot of people, you're like, oh, why do British people get so concerned about heat when it's 25 degrees outside, etc.? And there's a very good reason for that. Our buildings are not designed for the heat. Buildings in the UK are designed to keep as much heating as possible, and none of our buildings have air conditioning, which means when it gets hot, all of our buildings are basically like ovens, and it's so overwhelming, and it's flat out awful. So that's why the British moan about the heat so much, which is why I'm recording it on a Friday night, because a few moments ago I was like, oh, I've actually got to record the podcast tonight, because if I don't, I'm going to die tomorrow when I come to record it, because I will get roasted in this thing, which basically sounds like a Final Destination plot of like one of those films. So, as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwiley@connorwiley.net. You can always leave a comment at the show notes at connorwiley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet on Twitter at sci-fi or leave a comment on the Facebook post. And always feel free to send pictures of where you're listening from. I always love to see where all of you are from all over the world. And I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. So today's episode has been sponsored by my brand new book, The Forensic Psychology of Deception, a forensic and a criminal psychology guide to deceit, lying, and criminal deception. And this brand new book is absolutely brilliant because it really does help you understand lots of the criminal myths about deception. Because whenever we tend to think about lying and people who detect lies for a living, we always tend to think that there are people who can just look at someone and they instantly know that they're lying. But in reality, does it work like that? And even if these lie detection wizards are real, how do we increase the ability of normal police officers to be able to detect lies? Or more importantly, to be honest, are police officers and those who work in the criminal justice system any better than you or me at detecting lies? So that's something that we look at in this great, really easy to understand book. Plus, we also look at my absolutely favourite topic. We look at the verification approach and the strategic use of evidence matrix. Now, these two chapters are brilliant and so much fun. They're so eye-opening, they're so insightful, and they were just so much fun to research and write up about. Because these are quite revolutionary approaches that will really help you understand lie detection better and how police officers can catch criminals out to increase their lie detection cues. And that's what this book is all about. It really does a focus on lie detection cues just so we can understand and catch criminals out. So it's a brilliant book. I flat out love it. You really have got to buy it. It's so much fun. So that is the Forensic Psychology of Deception, available from all major ebook retailers, and you can order the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. And if you want the audiobook narrated by artificial intelligence, then now you can at selected audiobook retailers like Spotify, Kobo, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble, and selected library systems like Overdrive, Baker & Taylor, and Biblioteca. So whilst buying books help to support the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And as always, a massive thank you to my patrons. Your support shows that you like the show and you are wanting to continue. And if you want to become a patron of the show and get access to tons of great rewards, including over 60 exclusive blog posts, which won't be made into podcast episodes for weeks, months, or even years. And even today, on the day of pre-recording, I've been adding some brand new exclusive blog posts, which will not be made public for at least another year. Then now you can at patreon.com/the Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, then now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Wiley. So that's enough of the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about what is the forensic psychology of deception. And I know that was a bit different than what I said in the news section, but it's been a few days since I put this podcast episode together, so I did forget my actual title, which happens way more than you think. So this is going to be a lot of fun, so let's dive into it. And this is an extract from the first chapter of my brand new book. So let's dive into it. Introduction to the Forensic Psychology of Deception. To kick off this fascinating book, we need to understand what actually deception is, why psychologists are interested in the area, and what are some of the theories around lie detection that the literature is built on, at least in the early days. Ekman's theory of lying. As a result, our first theory that is critical in the development of lie detection as a field of study comes from Ekman and his theory of lying, since the modern study of lie detection can be traced back to Paul Ekman's book, Emotions Revealed, and whilst it is largely outdated by modern standards, especially in 2024, the book was very useful in generating ideas, interests, and studies as different researchers wanted to explore the ideas written in this book. In addition, Ekman believed that because of his academic work published in 1992 and 1996, that lies have to involve a person intending to mislead a victim, and a victim that is unaware of that inattention. For example, if this is actually true, this actually happened, if my friend asked me to post an anniversary card at 7 a.m. in the morning as I was going to work, but I didn't post it until 4 p.m. that day, but I said that I had posted at 7 a.m. because I didn't want them to know the truth, then that is a lie. I misled my friend and they didn't know that I was misleading them. An oddly specific example I know, but I might have lied because I didn't want them getting distressed, that it wasn't done exactly as they instructed. Anyway, Ekman's idea follows the concept that not all forms of deception or misleading information can be considered a lie. At first, I didn't really understand this idea, because surely every type of deception involves a lie to someone, or you convincing someone of something that isn't true. Yet, when we think about it, there are types of deception that don't involve lies. For instance, magicians are very open about their deception, as well as a secret isn't lying if other people know that it's a secret. Final example is that false memories of sexual abuse aren't technically lies according to Ekman, because the intention isn't to mislead. Therefore, current academic research focuses on developing a set of interviews and procedures that make it more difficult for people to hide lying cues from police officers and other people. This is a large focus of the book, and we get to cover some of my favourite interview sets that are absolutely fascinating, and I'm excited to share them with you. Why is lie detection difficult? In addition, Ekman laid out some basics about lies that we need to take a moment to appreciate, because they help people to understand why lie detection is so difficult and that it isn't as easy as people imagine. One of the first problems that make lie detection hard is because more often than not, we don't have baseline measurements for the interviewee for their manipulation. For instance, we don't actually know how their touch, stroking, or other small ways how a person manipulates their body is normal for them. One person might naturally blink a lot, and someone else might blink rarely, because that is normal for them. The problem with this is that it makes lie detection very difficult, because when someone lies, they typically have lying cues. But if we don't know how these cues cause changes in a person's body, we cannot be sure if a body manipulation is a cue or something that is just normal to that person. This first problem is made even more difficult when we consider that body manipulations are related to strong emotions, not always, because if someone is lying, as well as you cannot make lie detection judgments on emotions alone, because they are often misleading signs of deception. Secondly, the lying context can make lie detection difficult, because lying context is very wildly. For example, it is easier to tell a lie if you have time to prepare for it, compared to if you have to lie on the spot. Personally, I was very good at lying about certain topics as a child, because I had to survive. So in certain contexts around my sexuality, I was an expert liar. Yet if I stole something, or if I had to lie about something that didn't directly impact on my survival, then I was a worse liar. So context can be everything in lying. This is something that we explore later on in the book. Thirdly, assessing a person for lying is very complex, because we need to monitor everything in a person, from their facial features to changes in voice. Therefore, one of the biggest mistakes that someone trying to detect lies can do is to only focus on voice and facial aspects. These might be the easiest parts of lie to focus on, because these can be more useful lying cues. Yet equally, there are some of the easiest cues for a liar to change, monitor, and manipulate. So it is crucial that lie detectors focus on more cues too. As a result, Ekman suggested in his 1992 paper that it is more important to look out for leakages in the way how the lie's strong emotions manifest themselves. His ideas include looking for faster breathing, an increase in sweating, and swallowing, amongst others, as well as Ekman suggested looking out for negative emotions like fear that might manifest as louder speech, because that is associated with anger and speech pauses and errors. Also, if an interviewee has a whining of the face, then this suggests fear and a lack of story preparation too. Leakages and lying cues play a major part in this book. Building upon this further, Ekman proposed that facial features are key to telling if someone is lying or not, since if someone is actually happy, then their real emotions in their facial movements, as well as real sadness and fear, requires forehead expression, whereas anger according to Ekman, is very difficult to fake, based on his 1985 theory. Furthermore, muscles involved in anger are very hard to control, so an innocent person might struggle to control their anger, but a liar might struggle to make their anger look real. Then being able to tell whether these muscles are being used could be a reliable and important indicator of lying behaviour. Throughout the book, we'll see how reliable these facial markers are for lie detection. In terms of research support, Hasses and Bogerman 2010 tested these accuser by getting college students to cheat on an experiment in both a real transgression scenario and a fake one that involved them being secretly filmed and confronted about their behaviour, causing them to tell a lie. Afterwards, a panel of judges looked at their behaviour. The researchers demonstrated that the judges found the truth tellers were angry and used more angry words in the film compared to the liars. How good are people at lie detection? To wrap up this first chapter, we need to know a critical fact about people's ability to detect lies. This forms a core part of the book. We need to understand that, generally speaking, people are little better than chance in their ability to detect lies, regardless of the fact that some people are better than others at detecting these forms of deception. Ekman et al., 1999. We need to understand this fact, as one of the main purposes of creating procedures and interview sets that maximize lying cues is so we can give interviewers the most chances to tell if someone is lying or not. People need these increased chances as people are naturally bad at telling if others are lying. Also, Ekman believed that a person could be trained to better detect lies, and I think there is some truth to this. As we explore this subfield in more depth in the other chapters, I think there are valid and somewhat reliable ways to improve lie detection abilities, but you need very specific techniques that a lot of people wouldn't use or even know about unless they've researched the area in depth. Ultimately, the bottom line is that there is no single simple indicator that instantly reveals who's lying. Now, with that we understand some basics about lying behaviour, we need to explore whether so-called professional lie detectors are actually any better than lay people. This is gonna be fun. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that you got something out of it. I know that I did, because the forensic psychology is an area that I always love. So when you couple it with deception, this has just been really informative, brilliant, and I think about this a lot in my own personal life, but also in my mystery books. So it's a lot of fun. I really do recommend this brilliant book. And if you know anyone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you want to learn more, definitely check out Forensic Psychology of Deception, available in all the usual places. And if you want to become a patron of the show and get access to tons of great rewards, now you can at patreon.com/The Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, then please head on over to buymeacoffee.com/Connor Wiley. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwiley.net. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.